Hello, and thank you for joining me to learn more about my qualitative phenomenological case study, the story of one cross-sector partnership, how a church initiated and sustained a partnership to support a local school community. I am Dr. Melissa Hess. Through researching the current literature, it's been seen that there are many current needs of both the local school and the church. In a recent condition of education report, they cite that 12.9 million children are living in the U.S. Under poverty. The CDC estimates that 1 in 5 children are living with a diagnosable mental health concern, of which 60% of those are not receiving treatment. Likewise, the church also has needs that are often difficult to meet. Data from the Barna Group, which is a research and resource company that focuses on the intersection of faith and culture, cites that Christians have a difficult time talking to others that are different than themselves, and that congregations find it challenging to engage in the local community. So, it has to be asked, can the needs of the school be paired with the mission of many churches to lead to a beneficial collaboration for both organizations? And that is what brings me to the two research questions. The first one is, how does a church initiate a relationship with a public school that results in school support? And then, how does a church and school relationship sustain a partnership that results in school support over time? There is current research on the value of cross-sector relationships and some additional literature investigating how those relationships were formed and maintained, but there is very little, if any, research that includes the church as one of those sectors in the relationship. I've chosen to use the Googins and Rockland critical steps in partnership development framework due to the lack of frameworks created for partnerships that include faith-based organizations. The framework used was chosen as it seemed to be the most suitable between a public elementary school and a faith-based organization. You can see there are 6 critical steps at the bottom of the slide there, and those are going to be used to develop the research questions in the study and also the coding. So for this study, I used a phenomenological approach to qualitative research that allowed me to describe the lived experiences from 2 different groups of people. It allowed me to position myself within the relationship between one school and church to learn directly from their experiences. The school studied is a kindergarten through 5th grade elementary school in a large district located in the suburbs of a Midwestern city. Enrollment is about 520 students. The church is a non-denominational church, again, located in the Midwest United States, approximately 200 attendees, and the church actually meets Sunday mornings in the studied elementary school. They are what we call a portable church, and that is one that chooses not to meet in a typical church building facility, but a rented space on a weekly basis. All supplies of the church are brought in, set up, and then later torn down and repacked into a trailer within the rented space every Sunday. This decision allowed the church the opportunity to give more generously to other ministries as the mortgage, upkeep, and expenses of the old building were no longer a part of their annual budget. This phenomenological case study included a group of heterogeneous individuals that had experienced the same church-school relationship phenomenon. 14 individuals across both the church and the school groups were individually interviewed. Interviews included 3 school administration, 2 were current principal and assistant principal, and 1 was the initiating principal, and 3 teachers. On the church side, I had 5 church staff members that were interviewed. 4 were current staff members, and 1 was a past staff member, and then 2 members of the church leadership team. In the middle there, you can see that the head custodian is also a church member, and he really was brought up a good deal, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Interviews were conducted through virtual online video meetings using Zoom software, and each interview lasted approximately 60 minutes and was recorded on Zoom, and it included transcription of the interviews into text. Interview questions with both the church and school personnel included grand tour questions and then a time for participants to share additional personal thoughts at the end. The same set of 8 questions were asked to both groups, and they were based on the Googins and Rockland framework. These are the school questions, and here are the church questions. Through the gathering of these interviews, I was able to collect data about relationship, processes, and the history of the organizations. I conducted an accuracy check with the transcription from the Zoom software, matching the video recording to the transcription provided by Zoom. During the interview, I also took light notes that included feelings, moods, and impressions that were made during the discussion. During the data collection process, I continually coded observations. Both deductive and inductive coding was used through the data collection process. Color coding was used in two ways. First, colors were assigned to each participant's interviews. The interviews were printed in whole in the color that they were assigned, and then organized by research question, showing participants' responses in their unique color. You can see the top left picture on the slide includes two different responses, a blue response and an orange response. I analyzed each of the questions documents one at a time, reviewing each participant's answers and forming common themes using the coding that included the Guggen and Rockland codes, as well as values, attitudes, and beliefs of the participant codes. After the document had been read, I created a color code for each of the common themes that were formed within each particular question. Again, that visual on the top left of the slide, you can see that there is an orange code and then also a green code. The codes and notes were recorded in a document, underlining each theme with its correlating color code. After color coding each theme within the document, I noted how many times it appeared within the question, counting specifically how many times it was present in the church and school participant interviews. This process was completed on each of the 7 overarching interview questions and recorded in the table at the bottom right-hand corner. There are common themes that weren't identified in participant answers, and we are going to dive into those a little bit. The first one was participant perceptions. The differing perceptions of the participants was indicative of the evolution of the partnership. You could really see at what point the participants were involved in the relationship, and it affected their opinion on the intention of the relationship, the mission and the goals, and the vision moving forward. Also, these mutually invested individuals were really important. The trust provided by them encouraged both the parties in the partnership to gain acceptance and momentum early in the relationship. Differing partnership definitions. The differing definitions of the key partnership ideas between the faith-based and the secular organizations was a big story in this research. The goals, successes, and resources, both the church and the school had different opinions of those, and that often caused some confusion between particularly the assistant principal. She felt that she had offered the church not much support. In reality, she had offered the church the one thing that they could not get on their own, and that was access to the community. You can see there the assistant principal felt like that she hadn't done anything for the church, and in contrast to that, the church participants really spoke of her as their primary champion. The weekend use of the space is something that cannot be ignored. It was brought up in almost every single one of the interviews, and so it had to be addressed that the weekend use of the space is a huge contributor to this relationship. The 6 critical steps that were analyzed and discussed were used, again, that Guggen's and Rockland framework, and we're just going to go over them here really quickly. First, defining clear goals. There was not many, if any, clear goals that were defined between the church and the school. There were assumptions made, and there were some overlapping values between the church and the school, but there was no clear goals that had been defined. Obtaining senior level leadership was something that was done successfully from the beginning, and it had carried its way throughout the relationship. Engaging in frequent communication. Communication was often done to help prepare for an event that was already being planned, or to help fund resources or get resources to the school. There was no communication that was happening in advance for pre-planning. Assigning professionals to lead the work. The two professionals that were assigned to lead the work on the church side was the children's minister, and on the school side was the assistant principal. And both of them did a really nice job, which helped for the success of the relationship. A big story that came out of this as well was the importance of that head custodian. If you remember, he was in the middle of that Venn diagram, and he was one of those common members that was mutually invested in both organizations. Sharing the commitment of resources, both the church and the school listed a very long list of tangible resources that were provided from the church to the school, but there was some resource confusion, particularly the importance of the community access. The school could not easily identify that was something that the church was really seeking. And it was really the church's biggest resource that they were looking for. And of course, evaluating the progress and results, that was not something that was shown at all. So if you were counting, you know that there was only 2 of the 6 critical steps from Guggens and Rockland that were successfully hit. And so that leads us to really think about and question, was this a partnership or a relationship? And at this point in my work, I really did question that and ponder it for a long time. And I decided that although it could not be counted as a partnership as far as Guggens and Rockland's framework was framing, they were a successful relationship, and they were meeting the needs of the school community like they intended. So let's circle back to the research questions real quick. How does a church initiate a relationship with a public school? We can see that first they had a need for a meeting space in the church, and that's what really did launch it, was the church meeting in the school. The approval from senior level leadership from school and church was something that really got it going, and still continues today. And of course, those mutually invested individuals built the needed trust to get the relationship started. Looking at how a relationship and how this relationship was sustained, again, we can see that they created independent goals that did have some overlapping values there. Those mutually invested individuals really carried a lot of the trust in the relationship, and then those assigned professionals to lead the work both had their jobs to do in knowing who the point person was on both sides of the relationship. So the findings identified in this study is just one potential way to create social change. And this investigation found that through the formation of genuine relationships, trust, and sharing of resources, this partnership did result in the support of both the school itself and the surrounding families in the community. Social needs that were had in the school and surrounding community were most easily met with the partnership of the church. This partnership was built on the relationships that were created within the partnership and already existing relationships that were common between both the church and the school. The image of a simple machine moving a large boulder using a lever and fulcrum illustrates the ability of the local church to mobilize its resources to better make an impact on the social needs of the community. Every portion of the simple machine, the boulder or mass, the lever, and the fulcrum, are essential to the machine. They play a crucial role and can have a different impact based on the change of component placement and the size within the machine. With all 3 mechanisms working together in different ways, a change in force can occur. Just as the lever of the simple machine can use the needed mechanisms to create change in force, so can the boulder of social change be moved through relationships. Working alone, we all know, is difficult, and using that simple machine can combine power to exert a larger force. And in this case, the church could apply pressure, but without the relationships that were already formed there, those common relationships, not as much progress could be harnessed. If social change is to occur that has the potential to positively affect our communities, different ways of meeting needs must be researched. We have our Christian researchers in one bubble, and we have our cross-sector partnership researchers in the other, but they must come together and work together. These different organizations should begin to create central goals that will enable partnerships that work together to sustain the communities that they serve and exist within. Once research begins to increase in cross-sector collaboration that incorporates faith-based organizations, the potential of these partnerships will be more widely known and used as a vehicle to address social needs. Thank you.